when it comes to synastry, my dear Astrovich, one of the main things that I always look at are just, I get a sense of each person's natal chart, just, their temperament and such. And I look at the condition of their seventh house ruler and what sort of psychological baggage they're going to be bringing in with them. So, of course, that includes Saturn and Pluto stuff, So the first thing that pops out to me when I look at your chart is, oh, look, Pluto square Mars. Pluto is square Mars. These people have a lot of baggage, don't you, sweetheart? Because life fights you every which way. It's like nothing comes easy. I think of people who feel like they have to load their weapons and put on armor to go to the grocery store. These are people who have an explicit sense of life sort of fighting them, And especially, oh goodness gracious, there's a couple of things. And we won't belabor this too much, but Saturn in the 8th house, Amber has that too. These are people who get accustomed with loss growing up. It can be financial loss, growing up without a lot, growing up poor, or your parents lose their money or something. And oftentimes it's also an experience of death before your Saturn return. The 8th house ruler is in the 8th house, so it also has traumatic stuff to deal with. I usually look at the house that the 8th house ruler is in as being indicative of someone who dies in your life before your Saturn return. But in this case, the 8th house ruler is in the 8th house. Oftentimes we see it have to do with trauma and fear and all that sort of thing, or our dads are involved in shady shit, criminal enterprises or selling drugs or something, or dare I say, will abuse, But anyway, but it's still, this is a cool thing in a way because it gives you will. You do persevere. And you're a Pisces Venus. That's so sweet. I love Pisces Venus. I love Pisces Venus because they're usually subs. Even when they're Plutonian, they're still subs. And they love it when you ruin their makeup. When you make their mascara and their eyeliner run. Ruin their lips. Call them all sorts of filthy names. I love it. I love it. I love it. But anyway, so you see, you bring some of that Plutonian stuff, but you're also basically a full moon baby, Full moon babies have something to prove. And it's sort of difficult when you're an Aries sun with a Libra moon like me, or like you, but I have a Libra moon too. And so these people get very attached and have a tendency to be codependent, right? They really want to be liked. And the 7th house ruler in your case is Jupiter. Jupiter's exalted in the 2nd house. So that would tell me you probably, have a good relationship at some point in your life, Perhaps a marriage or a long-term partnership. Chiron in the 2nd house also indicates you probably grew up poor or with a lack of resources, but Jupiter ruling the 7th house and in the 2nd house. Number one, it's good for your own financial situation, but you need a partner of your own socioeconomic class. That's what you need, not someone who's taking from you, because you have an 8th house Saturn. 8th house Saturn is prone to loss, to getting into debt, or lending or giving too much, you see? Right, giving people your stuff, giving it away, sharing your resources. It's okay to share, just not with people who exploit you or who take advantage of you. Yo, Astro Witch's partner would probably fall in love with me.
Oh God.
I'm sorry, just all this Scorpio shit. That's my Cancer Venus.
Far away from the screen to look, but if you say Scorpio, that makes me excited.
Well, and it's all in the 8th house. Apparently, this person is an Aries rising. A very unhappy Venus. That's difficult. Well, the interesting thing, number one, that I notice is that the 7th house ruler is Venus. Venus is in the 8th house. Typically, this is someone who likes the bad girls, the dangerous girls. Or, I'm assuming girls, because I'm assuming you're a girl and they're into you. But they like the bad girls, the dangerous girls, the women of the night. Or those of us who do, those of us who make extra income with our body. If you know what I mean. I just do it virtually. But anyway, so, I mean, yeah, prostitution. I mean, someone who likes prostitutes is something that and I'm sorry, but it's what it is oftentimes. The eighth house is like, other people's stuff, and it's also criminal enterprises. But anyway, it's not just that, and I'm kind of being tongue in cheek, but it's people who, like the dangerous, exciting, dangerous types. But it can also be very cathartic in people who want to share the depth of their experience, their trauma, right? We got to share all our baggage together. But it can become a morbid type thing, you see. Anyway, what other stuff does this person have in their chart? Yeah, Leo moon. So of course, these people, their natural reaction is going to be to assert themselves, right? They're typically right, or they take themselves to be right. And they can be very reactive, you see.
A house moon too.
Pardon?
Fifth house moon. I wonder if they're very creative.
They're very sexual, is what they
Well,
are.
sexual too, but I always think of the creative first.
The first thing I think of is sex, but that's with everything. That's with literally everything. But the fifth house primarily was children and sex. Creativity was sort of an afterthought because how the fuck do you make children? Sex. It's a creative act. You're creating something. This person has Chiron in the second house too. So there's been this mutual thing with resources. 10th house ruler is Saturn in the 7th house. It's exalted and angular. So they're probably somewhat successful. They also have a very prominent Mars up here, exalted in Capricorn, conjunct the midheaven. And Mars rules the first house. So they're probably somewhat successful or prominent in some way. I haven't been able to see the chats. I don't know if you've been talking shit at me or mad or what. Anyway, so we got to pull up the synastry shit. So anyway, we look at the bad stuff first with the synastry grid. So that means I focus on Saturn, Pluto, and Mars. Number one, you know what, I'll get to that in a second. Number one, some bad that I think is rough. Okay, your Saturn is square their ascendant. So that means a couple of things. Number one, it makes it very hard to get together. Number one, it's like, we might like each other or be super interested, but circumstances keep intervening. But then once we are together, then we're sort of stuck together for good or for ill. And sometimes we want to break up and we really can't. And it could be from several different environing circumstances. Maybe there's children involved or money that's being shared, or we can't afford to live apart. But something tends to bind us together, albeit uncomfortably so sometimes. You see? So that's something you have to be aware of. That can be quite difficult, but it is a very binding thing. You see? It is a very binding thing. What I think of the moon on the south node as is a sense of familiarity, like having known each other from the past. And it's very compelling because it feels like you've always known the person and like they always know you. And that can be the fertile ground to let abuse happen or to be in an abusive circumstance because we keep rationalizing these things by our intense feelings. Because moon on the south node feels like, oh my God, I've always known this person. Right? They're from a past life or another place. It's just this incredible depth of familiarity. And I've had this several times myself. But anyway, Mars square the sun, well, it's a wide orb. It's really not that bad. It's a wide orb, but it can cause conflicts, you see. Because Mars gets agitated with how the sun presents itself oftentimes. Either it's too showy or too whatever, like, are you showing off? And then Mars gets mad, because that's what Mars does. But there's wonderful, wonderful, wonderful stuff too. So, there's good stuff for a long-term relationship. We've got Saturn trine Venus. I had this, doesn't always end up well. But it is a good indicator of a long-term thing in a committed relationship, and mostly a stable one. I say mostly because, you guys both have some wacky stuff in your natal charts. But there's also some weird stuff too. And I say weird because their Uranus is like really closely square your Venus, which is oftentimes an unconventional relationship, either with kink, like dominance and submission, or polyamory, or open relationships, or whatever, or swinger. There's all sorts of stuff. I'm having fun in all these communities. So I just get lonely. Like I want a real emotional relationship at some point. Like strangers at orgies is only cool for so long. And then it's like, I'll still want to do that. But I want someone who loves me. I want someone who loves me. But see, the reason I love couples is because couples, they give you attention. And I love attention. I love it. Obviously, I love attention. And then any aspects between Mars and Venus are interesting, even the hard aspects. And they could still be very attractive, you see. Because when I see Mars square Venus, now it's, a 5-degree orb, so a wider sort of orb. But when I see Mars square Venus, I think of a game of cat and mouse, you see. But in this case, it's the mouse that's chasing the pussy, isn't it? Well, you would be chasing here because you're the Mars person, but we have like sexual games we play back and forth, or we agitate each other. There's a pursuit, an active chase. There's friction involved, you see, which is fun in the beginning, it's the pursuit. I'm gonna get you. I'm gonna get you. We send each other nasty little text messages like, I'm gonna do this to you. I'm gonna do that to you. I'm gonna take your, what? And I'm gonna, and I'm gonna, and we describe this stuff so we get each other all hot and bothered before we get home. It's the kind of energy I think of with that sort of thing. But after a while, you see it sort of degenerates into a conflict and a competition, right? So the Mars person might get jealous of the Venus person, accuse them of doing this or doing that, or being too attractive, or flirty with other people, you see. So there's a jealousy thing that can happen with this over the long term. So it's just something to be aware of. It doesn't have to be, but it often is. But his Pluto is trine your Venus. This is one of my favorites. Very hot, very sexual, very obsessive, you see. And even though it's a trine, it's one of my favorite aspects in synastry because I love sex. And I love like weird sex. And like, craziness and passion at the same time and power involved. We see power dynamics and BDSM type stuff with that, which can be wonderful, or it cannot be so wonderful. Oh, and the North Node trine Venus. Yeah. See, this is like very compelling. And there's not a lot of bad stuff, to be honest with you. And then look at this. Holy Venus conjunct Pluto. And the Sun conjunct Pluto. So you're both the Plutonian people. And you probably more so, because look at this orb. It's 1 degree. This is one of the dopest aspects in synastry because it's hot as, this looks like some good sex. I want to watch almost. Even though I prefer to be a participant, but you know what I'm saying? This is a lot of intensity. It's a lot of intensity. But there's a sense of ownership and possessiveness too that can be very difficult. So I wonder if your partner sometimes feels like you're overwhelming them. Like you're sort of, suffocating. Like, do you suffocate them or do you feel like you own them? I had a partner, one of my exes before I came out. She straight up told me, like, the first couple weeks we were together, she's like, I feel like you're my property. And I'm like, oh my God, that's so hot. That's so hot. But then after a while, it came out that, I mean, it was really true. I mean, and not just in a fun, hot way. It was like, I'm being treated like an object, a thing, which, I mean, that's great in the right context, but anyway. But you see, there's a lot of good stuff here. It's just a lot of intensity and a lot of sense of like fate and destiny and all these sorts of highfalutin things. So it's like we take ourselves way too seriously. This relationship needs fun. It needs levity, right? See, there's Mars sextile Venus here. There's so many sexual things going on. I mean, look, it looks really hot. I'm sort of jealous, but you see, you just have to watch out for these pitfalls with conflict because of a sense of one person trying to control the other. You see? So I hope that's informative. Let me look at the chat to see what they say. Thank you for bringing your magic to the world, you and Amber. Thank you.
Oh, thank
You are so sweet. You are so sweet. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you. Saturn girl's the Holy Grail. I am the Holy Grail. Fill me with the Holy Spirit, please. I need to get filled up. That would be lovely. I just need to get filled. Like an eclair, So.
Or a Krispy Kreme donut.
I mean, yeah, I'm sort of bougie, so I say eclair, but yeah.